Okay, hello everyone. So today what I'm going to be talking to you about is the fact that the way customers are finding you is changing rapidly. And over the next 30 to 40 minutes, I want you to come away with three things. I want you to have a sort of baseline understanding of what's changing. I want you to know how it'll affect your business and really what you can do in order to affect that. So what's changing, how will it affect your business, and what you can do. And I'll mainly be talking about LLMs, which are large language models. So ChatGPT, Gemini, those sort of platforms, which I'm sure a lot of you are used to using by now. In fact, it'd be quite interesting to see who's using what. So if you could put your hands up and leave your hands up when I call the software that you might be using. So is anyone in here using ChatGPT at the moment? Quite a lot of you. How about Gemini? Microsoft Copilot? Perplexity. So if I called up any of the ones that you use, and it can be used for anything, right? It could be updating the tone of an email to a client, could be to find a recipe or to update a CV, maybe some of you. But obviously people are using it to find businesses and services as well. So pop your hands up if you were in any of those groups from before. So there's a few more of you before. So have a quick look around. There was quite a lot of you that have and already are using these platforms. So, and those numbers are only going to go up. So recently I read an article from a company called SEMrush. So SEMrush are a very well-respected SEO analysis tool. And recently they did a survey and they looked at some forecasting on where they expect user behavior to go with these platforms. And they're saying by 2028, so 2 and a bit years from now, they expect that 75% of all consumer decisions will be made with the use of a large language model. So that's 75% of all sales that you're getting right now, or sales that might go through to your business, will be made with the help of one of these models. So if your business isn't visible in these platforms, or the very least, if your business, when we search for you individually, isn't showing you in the best light, it might be saying they're not great at dealing with this or they're not perfect at that, it will affect your business over the coming years. So what I'll be talking to you about today is how we can affect that and how we can improve your chances. But before I go through that, I want to give you a bit of a history lesson. Don't worry, I'm not going to overdo the history here. But I want to have a quick look at search engines over the last 30 years, where we've been, and hopefully you can take some key lessons on what's happened before today. So in 1990, we were introduced to the World Wide Web. Before that, mainly the internet wasn't a household thing, it was more of a military thing. And by 1994, we were introduced to the first sort of search engines coming through. So we're talking, AOL, Ultra Vista, Yahoo. Does anybody remember that? Yahoo? So not the best looking website, right? There's a lot of stuff going on there. And we have come a long way since those days. Then in 1998, we're introduced to Google. So obviously it feels like Google's been around forever, but it's only been around since 1998. And it didn't take them long to become the #1 search engine in the world. So by 2002, they were already running the show. They were #1 search engine in the world. And how they did this is, the first thing they did is they made a much simpler interface, right? It's not cluttered with adverts and news articles. And the main thing that they did is they made everyone's life easier and they saved time, all right? Before Google, if you searched on Yahoo or any of these other platforms, more often than not, you'd be met with results that weren't accurate to what you were looking for. And it wasn't just the best, it wasn't a great experience, right? And Google changed all of that because the actual results that you got were far, far better. Wasn't perfect at that time, but they were far, far better. And that's basically that's the similarity that we're seeing nowadays with these large language models. It's saving us time and effort in terms of researching every single thing. If you went to Google now, you still have to click through, you still have to go to websites in order to understand what's going on, right? Whereas ChatGPT, as we'll look at in a minute, has saved so much time of all that research, those hours that you have to put into, and that's why they are winning, essentially. That's why everyone's moving towards that. Google weren't alone back in the day. We still had some competition. Does anyone remember MSN? So MSN, I remember it because I used it mainly for a chat function after school, messaging my friends or my wife. She wasn't my wife then. but it didn't take off as a search engine, so Microsoft pivoted in 2009 with Bing, all right, and that became Google's main competitor. And again, that's another similarity that we're seeing. It's not just ChatGPT that's there. It's not a one-horse race. We still have other competition there. But then the last 15 years have been about optimizing search and make sure that what you're seeing in your feed is correct, right? So 2011, we had the Panda update. All right, that is actually the real name. It's not, I didn't just make that up. And that was about understanding content on your website. Then we had the Penguin update in 2012. And that was to basically stop people from having loads of dodgy links linking to them to get to the top of Google, because obviously that doesn't give the best results. Then we had BERT in 2018, which was the first learning model to understand context behind what you're actually searching for. So if you imagine, Google's been around since 1998, and they're still optimizing to what is, your search in 2018 there. Well, let's look at 2022 when we're introduced to ChatGPT and these other AI models. We're 3 years in, and we're already at version 5 of ChatGPT. And I'm sure the people that actually remember using ChatGPT at the start will recognize that we're far better already 3 years later than we were at the start, right? So it's more than feasible to think in 2028 that, like I said before, 75% of all decisions, all purchases will be done with these platforms. I'm sure a lot of you already use it to buy running shoes or whatever you're wanting to buy, right? So it's the same with services. I want to show you a quick example. So this is a typical search. You might search accountant in Manchester, right, on Google. And you met with the standard results. You might have some ads sometimes at the top. You've got the Google Maps positions below. And then we're met with the regular search positions below that, right? But like I said before, if I want any of that, if I want to research any of that, I have to go into them all individually. Whereas if I go to ChatGPT and look on there, the first thing I do is a much more specific search. I'm not going to search accountants in Manchester. I might say best accountants in Manchester for small business owners. It might be a bit more specific than that even. But the main difference that we'll see here is, first of all, we'll get the regular options like you would on Google that come up. But what we also get is highlights of each firm, okay? We might get some notable mentions, and we might even get a quick comparison table between those firms. So what may have took me 2 hours before to find a company has took me 30 seconds, right? I can make a real decision already. And that is why it's so important to be found here. Even if I do the exact same search on Google, if I take that now, pop it in there, again, I still have to search around, do all my own research. And who wants to do that, right? So yeah, my point is, if you're not going to be thinking about how you can be there or how you can be shown best there, you will struggle in the next few years. Okay. At the start of the talk, I said I want to give you an idea of what you can be doing, all right, in order to succeed, in order to be seen there. Ad People, as an agency, we have over 2,000 clients, right? So we can test these theories. We can test what works, what doesn't work, much quicker than I could if I just ran my own small business or whatever. So I can take some of those learnings and give you a few shortcuts, if you will. But what's important to know, again, we've been an agency for 23 years now it is, and what worked on Google 20 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. So take what I'm giving you with a pinch of salt, because it might not work in 2 years, but it's what's working today, right? So the first thing is traditional SEO. So the first thing to understand about these models is they're pulling sources from across the internet. So whether that be Reddit and forums like Reddit, whether that be social media profiles like LinkedIn, or whether that be search engines like Google and Bing. So it's still very much important thing to be found in Google and found in Bing in top positions, because basically these models are using that to understand who's worth showing, right? It's not the only thing, but it's worth noting that they still use it, because what works with SEO still works with these large language models for the most part. Just some slight adaptations, which I'll take you through in a second. But it'd be great to understand who in here is doing SEO for their business at the moment, just to get an idea in the room. Okay, so a few of you, that's great. But for the rest of you, I would say, if you're thinking about strategy and you're thinking about being in these models, it's worth thinking about SEO as a foundation to be in there. Next thing is about optimizing your content. So I want to give you a few tips. If you wanted to jump on your website tonight and add a few bits and bobs, hopefully this will help, at least give you a bit of a push forward. So first thing I'd say here is content structure, all right? So when someone looks at, goes and does a search on ChatGPT, some questions they'll ask will require a very in-depth answer, right? And some questions you'll ask will be very simple, all right? You just want a simple, quick answer to what you're looking for. So it's your responsibility as a business to become a source that offers both those different options to these models. So what I've used with a few clients recently and what tends to be working is, I like to call it a simple, complex, simple sandwich, all right? So I'll explain what I mean by that. So at the top of the page, when you get onto any page that you have on your website, I'd have a very simple explanation and answer to what that page is about, all right? So that's what I have at the top of my page. Then the bulk of my page, I would go into depth and really cover that subject off properly with data, analysis, and a lot of information really to cover that question or what that page is about. Then at the bottom of the page, I'd have FAQs, so very simple question and answers to really cover off that page. So you've got your simple summary, complex middle of your page, and then simple answers at the bottom. So that's the structure I would follow with your page as of today. Next thing I would say is use real-world examples. So the one thing that ChatGPT can't copy, essentially, is your actual client examples and what you're doing for clients. So if you want to stand out or you want to separate yourself from every other company that's out there, you need to have real-world examples. So this is my client, this is how I helped them, this is the process that we went through, and this was the end result. If you don't have that, then again, there's nothing separating you from every other company that's there, okay? So I definitely would recommend real-world examples to show that you are different, okay? Next thing is actual using your ideal customer profile. So this isn't a new thing, right? So within SEO for years, if someone came to us saying, I'm an accountancy firm, I want to focus on construction companies, we wouldn't have turned them away 3 years ago. We'd still have been able to help them because we'd build out pages around accountancy for construction, payroll for construction, right? The only difference, and the main difference that we're seeing now, is the level of detail that you need to go into and specificity behind what you're saying. So whereas someone might have gone to Google previously and said, best accounting firms for construction companies, someone might go to ChatGPT nowadays and say, best accounting firms for construction companies with a size, of 5 to 15 million turnover. We have a payroll of 25 people, and they'll give you much more detail. Does anybody use ChatGPT like that themselves? Just they're much more specific, right? So that is the main difference here. We need to make sure that we're providing that level of detail to show that these platforms that you are experts in that area. So like I said before, you'd use real-world examples and actually say, if I want to appear for small businesses, accountants in Manchester, I should be showing small business accountants examples in Manchester, right? But here, I need to make sure that I'm covering off what I do, what services I offer, who I help, to that level of detail, show what my pricing structure is. I need to be showing real-world examples, FAQs. There's a lot more detail, right? So I'm not reinventing the wheel here when it comes to SEO and optimizing for websites. It's just the bar is much higher. That level of detail is much higher than it has been before. Last thing is increase your online authority. I'm stood in the way for some of you. But essentially, again, this has been around for ages. In 2012, like I mentioned before, we had the Penguin update. So even before that, we needed websites to link to us to show us that we're a good quality business, right? But nowadays, again, as time have gone by, after that update, there had to be good quality websites. And even more recently, they need to be relevant websites. So we refer to this practice, and it has been referred to this for some years now, as digital PR. So just like offline PR, where if you came to me and I went to, let's say we went to a PR agency together, I'd say, all right, okay, these are the sort of publications we want to be featured in, both locally or, relevancy to our industry, right? Just like that, you need to be looking at getting your business in relevant publications to what you want to focus on. So again, if we're going to use that construction example, I'd say, right, okay, we need to get into some construction industry publications, right? or even if I wanted to go to national press like Daily Mail or The Telegraph, I need to make sure the sentiment of those articles are related to my end goal. So it needs to be maybe something, I'm not going to make up an example, but let's say a construction/accountancy relevant article, okay? So we need to be thinking about that. So another example I can give you. So we did the digital PR for Accountex as an agency. Before the London event last year, we did an article on making tax digital. So we had HMRC commenting on it. We had Sage. We had some, really great accountants that talked to us about it. And then we did a survey with hundreds of accountants, right? And by pulling all of that together, we can get them featured in Yahoo Finance, the Daily Mail, Accounting Web. So they all have to be relevant to whatever the end goal is for you guys as a business, all right? Again, I'm not reinventing the wheel from an SEO perspective. It's just the level of detail and relevancy and specificity is all higher than it has been before. Hopefully that makes sense. At this point, if you're listening to me and thinking, actually, Oliver, sounds great, don't really want to be doing that myself, feel free. You can always have a chat with me personally. That's my Calendly there. You can book in a one-to-one with me and we can have a chat about your business individually. I'll leave that up for a second, but in the meantime, I'm going to invite Jason onto the stage. So Jason runs a team, has over 2,000 clients that they service, so he's very much on the front line for these sort of things. So I'm going to ask him a few questions myself, then we'll invite you guys to ask any questions you might have to either myself or Jason. Okay, so Jason, I want to get your opinion on how will customers find me if how they search is changing?
I want to start with a little bit of context. So the team that I manage is kind of broken up into 4 areas, 4 really important areas. So we have Google Ads, bread and butter, we're really good at that. We have around 1,200 clients that do Google Ads. But we also do local SEO, so really focusing on businesses that want to be known locally. And we do a lot of work in that space as well. And then we also focus on what we call smart sites, so building really affordable websites for small businesses, because websites are going to become critical, and we'll talk about more later. And then we have a team called Say Hello. And Say Hello is a tool we've built that uses AI. One of the challenges we found was that, it's quite a crazy number, but more than 50% of calls that SMEs receive are missed. They don't answer them. And the majority of the time, they don't even get back to them. And that's a real problem. They're spending lots of money to try to generate that traffic to the business. So the prism I'm going to answer these questions is we're thinking about that full experience and thinking about that full picture, not just on Google Ads. That'll be an important focus, but it's the whole thing. Now, the first thing I'll say to you guys is, who here thinks that Google owns more than 90% of search? Just raise your hands. More than 90% of search owned by Google. Okay, cool. Who doesn't think they own more than 90% of search? Great. And the reason for that is simple. Sometimes we think of search as search engines, but Google is just a search engine. We spoke earlier on about things like Reddit, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, etc. All those are search. So when you're thinking about search strategy, think about all the different places and all the different platforms that you've been searched for. Now, with that in mind, earlier on we did a bit of a video showing if somebody looks for an accountant, they go to Google on search, the first thing you saw at the top was Google Maps. That's something really important. And actually, as LLMs get more and more popularized, Google Maps is in a really unique perspective because that's all about local awareness and local understanding. So you want to nail that. And with that in mind, search becomes more about answering not just questions, but really specific questions. So content on the website is the driving force of all of that. If the website content is really generic, you're going to not really be answering those really common questions that clients are asking on the website. So really, we need to think about how we see search and move away just from Google as a search engine, but actually how we see search in every area. Get involved in Reddit, get involved in other places where search is going to drive more traffic, more awareness to the business. And that's going to be like a real cornerstone. Rethink what search means. Also, consider the search is no longer just text. It's also video, it's also audio, it's also images. And one thing that AI can do is it can help you create relatively good quality video now that you can put onto websites. So when you go onto a website, you want to think about the content, the sandwich, think someone's hungry, the sandwich that Oliver was speaking about earlier on, but also think about what video goes there, what image goes there, what audio goes there. So when people are searching for you, the LLM can really optimize for all the different modalities that it works within to get the best possible results for your business.
Thanks, Jason. So obviously talking a lot about LLMs, but it's also worth noting that, Google Maps, social media, we should also be thinking about other areas. Will clients actually stop visiting my website completely in the future? I think that's a great question.
I also want to get through this relatively quickly because I want to get questions from the audience. So I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker. The answer is no, but yes. So you're going to get a lot less traffic to the website that is looking to learn. A lot of people come to the website now because Google says, these guys know a thing or two, go there. You go there, you consume the information, and then you go back, and you go to the next website, you read all the information, you go back, and you keep doing that till you find the thing you're after. What LLMs will do is give you the information you need, so when you do go to the website, you're more likely to be ready to transact. So you're going to get a lot less traffic coming to the website. We already see that now, but the conversion percentage improves if it's really specified to the people that are landing. Also, just think of an LLM as an extension to your website. So what's happening is the LLM is going to present the information from your website to those people. So think of the LLM as an extension, not as a replacement.
Yeah, I've actually got some data on that actually from our clients as well. So it's actually 4 to 5 times more likely to convert after going through an LLM than just going through Google at the moment. So that's actually the data that we're seeing. So, will AI only recommend the biggest brands? Yeah, I think this is key to a lot of people that'll be sat here.
Again, if you just go back a little bit to your own personal usage, what LLMs are doing now is they're really getting to know you in a really deep way, because it's unlikely that most of you are going to the previous conversations and deleting them all. You're kind of leaving them there by and large. You don't go, great, delete, 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 it stays there. So it learns and learns and learns about you. So when it goes to make recommendations, it's more likely to recommend something that matches your own value set, as wild as that sounds. So if in your previous conversations you spoke about how much you value small businesses, you spoke about wanting that niche, homemade, from the UK, etc., it will know that. And if you think of your LLM like becoming your AI version of you, as weird as that sounds, like your AI avatar, your ChatGPT account is becoming that. If it knows you're after those smaller businesses, it's probably going to recommend more of the smaller businesses. However, the big businesses are big businesses for a reason, because they adapt all the best practices that the small businesses are not operating fast enough or at scale enough to be able to put in place. So for small businesses that are looking to work in this new world, as long as you've got the right practices in place, it will replicate what that user is looking for. If they're looking for small businesses, it will know, and it will send more likely to smaller businesses. Does that make sense to everyone? Yeah?
Is reputation becoming a more important thing than traditional SEO?
Yes. Yes, it is. Because it needs, when you go to it, it wants to make sure to recommend something that doesn't seem biased. If it's not because of an ad, it's not because of something that it's got an algorithmic benefit of sending somebody over, it's because the business is reputable. So we'll look at things like Trustpilot. Have you guys heard of reviews.io? It seems to be indexing that a lot. So making sure that you own the properties like reviews.io, Trustpilot, Facebook reviews, even Google reviews, all those different review platforms are going to help it understand. If you've got reviews on your website, it will look at that as well. So having reputation is still important. It still wants to send you to people that are safe, that are good. But you want to really think about that. Because if you're not managing that reputation, one of the things we see quite common is on Trustpilot, people don't answer. And when they don't answer, that doesn't help the reputation. Say hello helps a bit with this, for example, because it replies to people. And one of the things we found with e-commerce clients is that if they get an email or a phone call and they don't answer, people get really upset, go to Trustpilot, leave bad reviews. By minimizing bad reviews, you improve your reputation, which means it's more likely for an LLM to decide to suggest you or not. So absolutely, reputation is a real core foundation of it. And you can even try to get it. We've got clients that don't have great reputations when they start with us. And we've tried to find ways that it comes up on Google, on ChatGPT. And what we find is when we say, why won't you recommend green, white, and red? then we'll go, well, because the reviews on X, Y, and Z are saying this is not a good business and it's not a good starting point. So it can be quite brutal. So yeah, reputation, 100%. Critically, it's not costly at all, just it's managing your reputation. There is no cost other than time.
It's also worth noting that even if you're not getting seen or not getting shown on these platforms, if you're in sales conversations with people and they're going to use ChatGPT to do a bit of dirt, digging some dirt on you, it will find it. So it's worth, cleaning house basically and really looking at all the different places that you're getting reviewed, making sure that from a customer service perspective you're on it, because it's never going to be more visible than what it's going to be in the next few years, right?
And I would just add that that's one of the real core reasons why we set up Say Hello, because we wanted to help these small businesses that can't answer the phones. Sometimes they get form fills and they don't even reply to people, it goes into spam. So that really negatively impacts their reputation. So to have an AI assistant and Say Hello means they can get straight back to the client. How can we help? What is it you need? And really customize to that business. We teach it about that one business. It can answer really common questions. It's such a challenge for businesses that have 2, 3, 4 people. Even bigger businesses that just can't answer or manage all the volume. Reputation is really, really critical. But it's already critical in SEO. I would argue even more so in LLMs.
So obviously we have quite a lot of clients that do advertising as well as SEO. So clearly these platforms are affecting advertising, right? So there's going to be less people using Google to search for businesses than maybe before. So the question I'll ask you is not actually that one. I'd like to know really what you're doing as a leader for your team in order to make sure that we're still getting good results from a Google Ads perspective, because I'm sure there's people in here that are advertising.
Can I just ask, who here runs Google Ads? Not many of you.
Not many.
Okay, great. So what we're doing to help clients with Google in general, whether it's organic, whether it's paid, Microsoft, etc. Again, we kind of break it down into like a foundational level. So the first is the website. If the website isn't there, and the quality of the website's not there, the speed isn't there, the experience isn't there, the usability is not there, almost whatever you drive to there doesn't have as much value. So the website has to be nailed. Then the next thing we look at is if you are getting traffic from wherever you're getting it from, are you answering those calls? Are you answering those leads? For a lot of our clients, the answer quite often, more than 50% of the time is no. So Say Hello becomes that part of that foundational layer. One of the things we're also finding is when you're using something like an LLM, you are going into more detail. So you wouldn't necessarily go to it and say, I'm going to be doing a marathon. What do you recommend I buy for shoes? You might say, I'm doing the Altrincham 10K next year. I've got flat feet and I need something that is within the price range of 100 and 200 pounds. That requires AI to understand the right type of keyword to target for it. So Google recently launched something called AI Max, and AI Max uses its own understanding on a broad sense of what it's after based on what's on the website. So the website information is absolutely critical, but what we're trying to do, we think of it like a funnel, not like a typical sales funnel, but more like an experience funnel. We've got the traffic at the top, whether that's organic or paid. So we need to nail that, make sure we're getting the right people to the website. Then we've got the actual website, make sure it's not garbage, and it actually allows people to understand what you're doing, allows them to convert. Then at the bottom of that, we then have Say Hello, or whatever. If you've got a human that can answer the phone, brilliant, but just making sure that every lead has been answered to. So when you really think about that funnel, at what stage of the funnel do we need to be improving? And every month we pull in the data for all the clients and see, right, which stage of the funnel right now needs the most attention? So if you kind of think of it like that, like an internal audit of your own funnel, which bit of the funnel right now needs most attention? And then whichever bit you're in, it's probably going to be like 50 things you can do to try to improve that. And it's constantly improving that as an area.
Great. So I'd like to ask anyone in the audience, if you have any questions about AI or search, we'll be happy to answer those for you now. Anyone? So there's a fellow at the back there.
I was wondering about AI fatigue against the consumer when you were talking about AI chatbots, because I find a lot of people get turned away by AI taking questions that normal people usually would.
I think he's referring to say like.
Can you give more of an example? So when you speak of AI fatigue, give me an example.
So I suppose because AI is in so many things nowadays, many people are just being turned away from AI as a basic concept of answering questions, or in, it's in our social media, it's in everyone's lives. So from a business perspective, I can see how people would see it less personal than a human perspective. And a lot of colleagues of mine as well discuss AI being kind of a turning away point when you come on a site and ask questions and it's just a bot.
So what's the question?
So, I mean, where does that lead to the future of us? You saying it's going to be involved in everything, and it'll help the chatbots, but what if people get turned away?
I think good AI is AI you don't know it's AI. Right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I'll use Say Hello as an example. We set up Ella for every business. And when somebody makes a phone call and they miss the call, when they get a response, can they tell it's AI? You know the Turing test, yes? So it's the Turing test is the ultimate test. How long before they know it's AI? If it's really evidence self, it's AI, that's bad AI.
Yeah.
But if we use AI, for example, we use AI for creating content for some of our clients. But we do it in a way where it's replicating the exact client in a world where if they could speak, what would they say? How would they say? What would they focus on? And then the human curation is still the really important part. So whatever comes out of it is a human looking at that and making sure the quality is one that is more human. You're right, there is an AI fatigue where a lot of people say, this is great because AI, and it's almost like, well, yeah. But if you do it right, it can be quite magical because it allows you to, one of the things that people were, when AI was first coming around, even in our business, most businesses, there was a thing that was around, what can we automate with AI to be more efficient? That was almost like the go-to thing. What we realized is that we were looking at it the wrong way. It was, what can we do with AI we couldn't have done without it? And I learned something that was really interesting. So businesses tend to go down one of two paths with AI. So they go down either a FOMO path, right? It's like, oh, get onto it now. If you don't get onto it now, you're missing a massive opportunity. And you might know some people in the business like AI everything. You've got FOMO on one side. Then you got FOMU, right? Which is fear of messing up. And they're like, do not touch this. We're golden. We're in a really great place. Where you really want to be somewhere in the middle, which is more FOMAR, which is focus on maximizing advantages. What are the advantages that AI gives, and focus on those. Not everything. It's knowing how to sift through it, because there's a lot of it that is junk. It's knowing how to focus on it the most to get the absolute most advantage of it, but focus on that one thing until that one thing doesn't feel like AI. And that requires a lot of focus and understanding and a deep level of curiosity. What's happening today? What's happening in the market? For example, have you guys seen the videos of Will Smith's spaghetti where it's really terrible, and then Vimeo or Video came out with a new version that looks actually relatively good? But if you look at the prompt for good video on AI, for example, you need to know about video. You need to know about lenses, zooming in, zooming out, shutter speeds, etc. So it allows you to do things at scale that you couldn't do as a human. But you're right, there's a lot of FOMO or FOMU. There needs to be more focus on FOMAR. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you.
Anyone else?
It could be local SEO related, AI, Google Ads. Go for it.
I'm just wondering whether websites need to be built differently now that LLMs are sort of crawling over it in a different way. Or, I appreciate there's focus on reviews.io and Reddit and all sorts of other things you need to do, but just specifically in relation to the website, should it be built differently?
Yeah, great question.
I'll give you my opinion on this one. So should websites be built differently for AI? Was that the question? Yeah. So for the most part, right now, the stuff that worked for SEO to get you to the top of Google works for large language models. Not all the way. It's not like we're just the people that are top of Google are now top of AI models. There's slight adaptations, but on the whole, the structure and all the rest of it still should be set up well from an SEO standpoint. Where it might change slightly is like I said, is more around how much detail you're putting into your content and how you're actually phrasing things rather than the structure of the website. Because the website at the end of the day is more of a tool to show these platforms what you do and who you are, rather than it's less of a, you don't need to change the website up that much. I think it's more of a conversion tool now. You want to give them the right amount of detail to get them to your website and then have the right amount of detail for them to actually buy into you as a company. So probably the thing I see most for accountancy firms is you don't actually shout about your wins very much, and you don't have loads of case examples. You don't really sell yourselves very well, no offense. So I would say if you're going to use anything, if you're going to change anything moving forward, is just make sure you share how great you are at what you do. And when people do find you, you're more likely to convert. That's what I'd say on that. Is that okay?
I deliberated a little bit just because it's such an interesting question, in that it's rare for me to find websites that are meeting at least consistently basic standards. So there are basic minimal standards you'd expect on a website. I'll give you an example. The About Us page. I cannot tell you how many clients don't have About Us pages. And it's so important because it's why you and then why your service. So should it be built differently to how they are now? Yes, in that there are too many bad websites now. And that's going to amplify in the LLM world. So by and large, how people are creating websites are not good, especially SMEs, because they don't know how to build websites. So it's getting those basic foundations right. And that sounds really obvious, but I can't tell you how difficult it is when we get all these clients that come in and got really bad websites. But then on top of that, multimodality is becoming more and more important for LLMs. So a website that has really great text and a great explanation video and some really great imagery and potentially audio, it has so much more to pick up on, to get information from, to send it to you. But equally, again, like the question from the gent there of, that you should do that anyway, because humans learn differently. Some are visual, some like text, some like audio. So there's a lot of things right now that we should be doing anyway, but we're not. What LLMs are doing is making us do it right now. Does that make sense? Yeah. Really interesting question.
I was just wondering, I think you kind of touched on it when you got to reputation. So from a consumer perspective, from a searcher, if you like, I was wondering how AI deals with opinion, because a result on a customer survey is an opinion.
Yes.
And then moving on, saying if it builds a picture of reputation, is there a danger that the less scrupulous, larger organisations might influence the data out there so that that opinion comes back to something that is not something I can trust?
Yeah, so what's the impact of opinions on LLMs? The answer is that it's smart enough to at least look for a series of opinions and patterns, and LLMs try to be balanced. So unless you really specifically say to it, tell me why they're terrible, most people ask relatively open questions. Why would I work with this accountant? It understands that it needs to go and give you the reasons why with some opinions, but it also look why not, but also why yes. But that's also why it's so important that people that give bad opinions on review platforms are responded to. And also to be managed, like Trustpilot is like any other platform. Some people will leave bad reviews, especially if you have competitors. They're going to gun for you and give bad reviews. It's part of the trade. You just need to know how to use Trustpilot really well to raise it to Trustpilot, say, number one, they've never left any other review. That looks odd. Number two, I've looked everywhere for this case and I've got no clients of that ilk. And Trustpilot, by and large, they're very careful with defaming. So they don't want a platform that defames a business. So if you build a good reputation or relationship with people like Trustpilot, you can do things like that and manage that quite well. So it's also go to your website where you can control the narrative. Oli said earlier on about setting case studies. So if you put loads of case studies of clients and you link back to the business or to where the review was, it gives a better authority to say, yes, this is real. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's not unsurmountable.
I wondered how much LLMs talk to social media and social media talks to LLMs. What's the impact?
They scrape the data. In terms of talking to each other, I would say a lot less than one would expect because they're also in competition with each other. So LLMs like ChatGPT are going to be competing with Llama, for example, from Meta, to the point where, for example, Twitter, or X now, I don't know if I'll ever get used to that, it's cornering off saying, no, do not access X, that's for Grok. And I imagine that over time, Meta will try and do the same. So that's a benefit of using their LLM. The difference is that Llama is open source, whereas ChatGPT is obviously more closed. So anything that is public that can be seen, it will, but it doesn't speak to each other as much as you may think. But it will go to all the places that it gets the information from, i.e. the website, the store, the business, etc., etc. So the amount of communication between the two, I'll probably say, is not as much as people would expect. Would you add anything?
Yeah, I'd say, again, like Jason said before, it's quite a balanced thing, right? AI, they want to make sure they're getting sources from multiple places. I'd say social media is probably not the top of their list in terms of quality. So they'll put things like search engines like Google or even Reddit and forums like Reddit ahead of those social media platforms at this time. But it's not to say they won't change it, because who knows?
That's really interesting. If you see Reddit as a social media platform, oh yeah, does it love Reddit? Yeah. But if you're talking about things like Instagram, maybe a bit less. Yeah. Any other questions?
Just going back to what you were saying about the website and improving them for LLM, what do you think is the optimal mix of written, audio, visual? Because we don't see very much audio and visual, I think, in the average website at the moment.
It's a good question. So the question was, just if no one heard, is like, what's the good mix of things like text and video and imagery within a website? And the honest answer is there's no right answer, right? I'd say at the moment the LLMs are favoring text more than others, and they're not really taking into account too much video and audio. But the key difference here is we're not just trying to appeal to LLMs. So I'd use text, really, that would be my main focus if I was trying to get you ranking there. But I'd still be using video, audio, imagery within your website for when people actually do land on there in order to convert them into business. That's the key difference.
The foundational is definitely text. So if you can nail the text, you're good. But when I talk about video, I'm talking about things like YouTube videos. So if you add a video, you put it to YouTube, YouTube will then transcribe the video. You can then embed that video into your website. If it then has both, good. Also, just generally from a conversion perspective, an explainer video on a page is going to drive you so much more conversion than just a bunch of text. Because people love videos. If you can explain something in a minute as opposed to real depth, the conversion is better, but also the information the LLMs will grab from YouTube. It does love YouTube. Going back to your question, madam, about social media platforms, if you see YouTube as a social media platform, you see a lot of reference to YouTube. But yeah, foundations, text, nail it. Once you've nailed that and you're in a good position, then look at video next. Also remember that YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. So it allows you to kind of maximize for both. There was a gent right there at the back with a beard that wants to go next.
So you mentioned Reddit.
Yes.
How would a bookkeeping or accounting business utilize Reddit to increase their searches?
Yeah, great. Love that. Your knowledge. So if you find different subreddits within, say, SMEs, within certain verticals, businesses in the UK, and you create an account with your business name, your profile with your business information, and you just spend loads of time going in and answering questions, right? It creates more awareness of you in terms of your answer. It gets indexed so people know John from the Green Accountants has suggested this is the best way to do it. It also gives you a lot more authority because people are then replying back to you, thumbs up or voting upwards, etc. So if you go, it's a bit like Quora. Have you guys heard and used Quora? Similar concept, but Reddit particularly. So if you just go in there and just go to town on answering questions with your brand and your identity, it will help understand that you have a lot of authority as a brand, as a basic level. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Jason, I have a question. In the traditional SEO, we can use Google Analytics to monitor the result. So in the AI, how can we measure the discovery in AI?
Oof, yeah. So are you talking about LLMs, how to know if they're coming to you or not? Well, the good news is ChatGPT, which is obviously by far the biggest right now, around 8 weeks ago, I think now, they added UTM parameters to all their links. So anytime any traffic goes to your website from ChatGPT, in Google Analytics, it will know because the UTM parameters will be ChatGPT. As in GA4, which don't get me into UA GA4 conversation, but in GA4 you can go to where the websites that are sending you the most traffic, and you can look at that by different LLMs. If it's web-based, if it's from your mobile, it's a little bit more challenging, but it is something that you can get other tools put in place to also help you with it. But ChatGPT is already there because it's got UTM parameters. So I probably would start with that. And then you can look at getting a little bit deeper into the others. But if you use GA4 and you really get familiar with it, you'll be good with ChatGPT for now.
Okay, so I think today you shared about the content, how to be understood and trusted and cited by the LLM. But maybe in the near future, the users might not be the human or be the LLM, might be the AI agents. So what's your view about the discovery for AI agents?
So how do I think AI agents are going to come into the flow? Yeah, we had a meeting recently with Microsoft. And one of the things that Microsoft was telling us was that instead of having a traditional search in Microsoft where you see a product or a service, think of it, instead of creating ads, your business would create agents. Those agents would then be available in LLMs. So when you search for a thing, the Copilot or ChatGPT will say, here is an agent that can walk you through it and take the series of actions for you. But that's like a very Orwellian world to some degree, where you're building agents that interact with the world for you. And I think that's probably the way it's going to go, where you speak to your ChatGPT, which will be your agent, has like a handshake with other agents and exchanges, and comes back. But I would say that's probably not going to be a thing for another 2 to 3 years. So it's not something on mass. But again, if you can guys take away one thing from anything today, is just be curious and keep learning, keeping an eye and experiment. Because when it does come out, it won't come out with a bang, it'll come out with a fizzle. And people will test it, practice it, break it, make it better, until it becomes more scaled because they're now ready to go live with it. Yeah?
Perfect.
Great. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.